Hey there, Fearless Gamers. This is Matt the Clown, and I'm coming at you with another series in our Joy of Painting Minis line. In this particular series, we will be painting this model, which is a PanOceania. It's a model from Infinity. It's a PanOceania Akalis Sikh Trooper. It's a jump troop for the PanOceania Army. And basically it came with the Operation Ice Storm starter set, which I do have an unboxing and review that I need to upload for that, which I'll probably do soon. My fiance took the Nomad minis from the Ice Storm box, so I was sort of saddled with the Pano models. Pano's not my favorite faction, but the models in this box are pretty cool, so I have no problem painting them. I won't have a problem playing with them in small games, but I digress. A couple of quick things. Much like the Vet, I like to paint with some noise on in the background. It actually somehow helps me keep focused. It also keeps me from getting spooked. I am a very easily spooked kind of guy, and when it's quiet and late like it is right now, I like a little background noise. Usually I'll go with a horror movie, which you'd think is ironic, doesn't make any sense for a spooked guy, or a Let's Play on YouTube. But to avoid any kind of copyright issues, I've elected to put a very specific YouTuber by the name of Heather Feather in the background. I'm a very big fan of her work. If you want more details, Google it. Hopefully she won't have a problem if she catches wind of it. I doubt she'll catch wind of it. We're such a small channel. But without further ado, let me go hit play on that. I'll be back in 2 seconds. 1, 2, and I'm back. Hopefully it's not too loud. I doubt it is. I don't even know if you guys will be able to hear it. If you can, I apologize if it's distracting for you. Now, the colors. For this model, I'm going with a very specific sort of color scheme. If you guys are fans of Song of Ice and Fire, or the now somewhat better known Game of Thrones TV series, I'm doing these in a House Tyrell color scheme, which involves, and I'm using all P3 paints here, Gnarls Green, which will be highlighted up to a Josan Green, Rulic Gold, there it is, which will be highlighted up to a solid gold, Beaten Purple, which will likely just get highlighted back up to itself. Maybe I'll throw a little Scorn Red in there for some brightness. If that changes, you'll know in that particular episode. But the only Citadel paint we'll be using is their Agrax Earthshade. I like a little wash, and I like the Citadel washes more than I like the P3 washes. The P3 washes get a little too glossy for me. I like a more matte, flat kind of finish on my minis. I'm also going to be utilizing very specific brushes that I recently picked up from Blick. It's these. I wish I knew the model numbers or the name of the line. They're from Princeton Art and Brush Company. I picked these up at the recommendation of a friend of mine that works at Blick, who is a very good artist and has done some great concept art for Fearless Games for future projects that maybe we'll actually move forward with at some point. I don't know if he's got a website. I'll find out, and maybe we'll put it in the description. In any case, without further ado, let me explain what I've done so far with this model. So far, with this guy, I've assembled him completely because, unlike the Vet, I've come to the point where I just prefer to completely assemble the model. I find it's a little bit easier in the long run for me to do so, so that's what I've done. I've clipped him, I've sanded him, or filed him, took off the flash, all that stuff, and then I primed him in my personal preferred primer, which is Vallejo Surface Primer. It's an acrylic polyurethane primer. Basically, it's magic. It is some serious wizard material. It takes paint very readily. It gets into all the crevices, and when airbrushed, will self-level. I don't recommend applying it with a brush. When I did so, it bubbled up, and in a lot of the crevices on the models that I brushed it onto, there was a little like pitting in the primer that would have been very unsightly. So if you do elect to brush it, be very careful, and don't be surprised if you have to strip it and start over afterwards. But if you're going to be airbrushing it, or if you want to take the chance on brushing it on, I highly recommend the Vallejo Surface Primer. You can get it from Amazon for cheap. I think I only spent a couple of bucks in total, maybe like $5 for that size, and it's primed my primary Infinity Army, my Pano models from the Ice Storm box, my fiance's primary Infinity Army, a lot of the Stark Lord's Infinity Army, my fiance's Nomad models from the Pano, and a number of other models. And I'm barely even, you can't see because of the lighting, but I'm not even halfway through it. The only caveat is you have to shake it before you use it. Absolutely every time, shaky, shaky, shaky. I've also noticed it kind of gunks up my airbrush, which now needs to be thoroughly cleaned, as I haven't really given it a really good once-over yet. But it's an airbrush. You're going to be cleaning it anyway. So, let's get started. A lot of what I'm doing with this guy is going to be sort of fly by the seat of my pants. I'm just going to be picking spots and making them colors. I know that his visor is going to be in gold, and I know his gun is going to be in gold. Probably some of his jetpack, parts of his shoulders, and other detail parts, but let's get started on the green, as that is the bulk of the model. Now let's see. I'm sure you guys can see it. Well, okay, I'm not sure, because I actually can't see the readout for my camera. I'm trying an angle that is a little bit different than what the vet gave you, to try and give you as much of a view as I can of what's going on. Now right now I'm just putting a very simple, very thin base coat onto this guy in the Gnarls green. Now the stuff that's gold, I'm going to put on over the green for the most part, unless it's something I know already is going to be gold. Like that visor, I'm probably not going to hit it with the green. One thing I like about the P3 paints, which I was going to do a P3 paint review video a while ago, that I never got around to recording. One thing I like about the P3 paints is that you don't have to thin them as much as the Citadel paints. I find that out of the pot, they're a little bit thinner, or at least a little bit easier to work with, without having to add a whole lot of water, or a whole lot of whatever your preferred thinning medium is. Be that paint thinner, which I don't really recommend because it's noxious and flammable, or any sort of, you know, big deal art supply kind of thinner that I might not be super familiar with, because I only took one painting class in college. I'm sure I've mentioned it in the past. I was a fine arts major in college for 3 years. However, I don't think I've gone into detail. I was a graphic design major for 2 of those 3 years, I believe. And then I switched focuses for a year from graphic design to drawing. I found that a lot of the graphic design professors, yeah, you can still see it. I mean, my hand's in the way, but you're going to have to deal with that. I found a lot of the graphic design professors to be not my style. And by that, I mean they were very... I don't want to use the word pretentious, because it's not the correct word. But it's all I can think of, so they were kind of pretentious. They were very much the kind of people you'd expect to be graphic design people, in that, you know, they were very... They had that stereotype to them where they were, you know, they wore a lot of black. I think one of them wore a beret. Drank a lot of coffee, listened to a lot of Bauhaus, that kind of stuff. Which, you know, if that's your jam, that's your jam. But it wasn't my jam. And as a result, I had a little trouble with those classes as far as attending, paying attention, doing well, that kind of stuff. And ultimately, I made the decision to switch focuses when one professor gave us a test based entirely on a textbook that she had advised would be completely optional. Now, when I was at a point in my life that if you told me a textbook was optional, I just straight up wasn't going to buy it. I was just going to save the money, spend it on something else. And even if I had bought it, I probably wouldn't have read it, especially if it were considered optional. So we got this test, and I wasn't able to answer a single question because I hadn't even purchased the requisite textbook. So I walked out of that class, and I'm man enough to admit it, I was nearly in tears. In fact, I think I may have cried later that day because, well, I had been questioning a lot of things in that time of my life. I think a girlfriend had broken up with me maybe a couple of months prior and had started seeing a good friend of mine who remains a good friend of mine. I am a very big proponent in the concept of forgiving your friends. Don't be jerks, guys. So I think I was putting up with that, and I was putting up with not doing so well in school, and I'd been in school for 2 years and had not made a whole lot of progress because, I'm not going to lie, I hadn't been going to class. But that's a story for another time. Possibly later in this day, but another time. Anyway, I was walking back to my dorm room, very upset, very unhappy, and a friend of mine who, I wouldn't even necessarily say we were close. I don't know if we were even friends. We were more acquaintances at the time. She saw me walking through the student center, and she could tell that I was about ready to jump off a bridge. Hope you guys can see the model. Yeah, you can. Cool. She could tell I was about ready to jump off a bridge or hang myself or whatever. And she comes up to me and she stops me, and I almost didn't see her. I think she tapped me on the shoulder, actually. I think she was behind me. But that's neither here nor there. And she says, what's wrong? Yeah. I explained to her what had just happened. I explained to her that I was feeling like I was going nowhere. I felt lost. I felt like maybe I was in the wrong place. And I think I may have even been considering just straight up dropping out of school. I definitely dropped that class. Possibly even that day. I may have also, if I remember correctly, yeah, I may have just gone straight and dropped the class that day. But yeah, I explained to her, like, things aren't going so hot for me right now in school. And she said to me, like, look, if you're not happy with what you're doing, change it. Ultimately, this is your future. You are preparing yourself for your future. If you don't think you want to go into graphic design, or if you don't think you're going to cut it in graphic design, then get the hell out of graphic design classes. We talked a little further, and she asked what I really wanted to do. And at the time, I had been entertaining a dream of becoming a comic book artist, which would still be a really cool thing for me to do, but I don't think I've got the chops, which is fine. I'm okay with that. Anyway, she told me, well, that's still an art major. And I said, yeah, but it's not graphic design. She told me, well, then switch your focus. I think she was a art minor, so she understood how the art department worked. So I went and I switched my focus from graphic design to drawing. Started enrolling in drawing classes and, sort of more traditional art classes. I think I took an illustration course, and for the next year, I was doing that. Now you'll notice I'm only painting like the, well, I don't know if you'll notice, but I'm pointing it out. I'm only painting the armor plates on his legs, because if you look closely, I hope you can see that, with the lighting you can't, he's actually wearing cloth pants under his armor on his legs. So I will be doing those in a different color, and since I'm aware of that, I'm not going to make things more difficult for myself in the long run by painting them in the green now unnecessarily. Is that a con piece? Well, it might be now. So yeah, I spent a year as a drawing major, And it was a little better. I was certainly doing better in my classes because it was more my my speed, more what I wanted to do. I think I'd gone with graphic design because everyone was telling me, oh, there's money in that, which by the time I graduated, no, there wasn't. You know, there was a boom right before I graduated in that industry, and when I graduated, and the people I graduated with who stayed in that focus, they did not get jobs in that industry because it was oversaturated with qualified people for at least entry-level positions. This was, of course, during the height of the recent economic downturn, so jobs were hard to find for everybody. And unless you were like a computer guy or an engineer or something like that when you graduated, you know, you were doing what I did when I got out of school, which was shift work, doing security at a racetrack, or something similar, of course. Not everyone was doing that because, well, that would be silly. I did, however, ultimately graduate as a creative writing major. After the year in the drawing focus, it became clear to me that becoming a comic book artist was not in the cards after I showed my portfolio to a comic book editor, and he, not exactly politely, tore me apart, basically. He told me I had years of work to become even eligible, and he told me, oh, my everything was bad. I don't think he even used the word bad. He probably used the word off or needs work. You know, he wasn't trying to be mean, so I don't hold it against him. But it certainly felt awful at the time. So, okay, cool. I keep shifting the paper towel around, which is what I was going to use as my my guideline for where to keep the mini. But yeah, that's not working out. Real quick, actually, I'm going to brushing my mouth. Sorry, I'm going to put this guy on here. Bam. This is something that I learned from girl painting, where she takes an empty paint pot, sticks a mini on the top, and that way I'm not handling it with my grubby ham hands. This should also make it easier for you guys to see it. I usually do that when I'm painting, but I wasn't thinking when I was setting everything up. Gonna get a little more Gnarls Green on my palette. Creative writing was a great major, actually. I had a lot of good times in those classes. Met a lot of cool people that I wish I'd kept in touch with after graduating. Actually, oh, I forgot. There was actually a year. I spent 5 years in college. I did not graduate in the stereotypical 4 years, which, you know, go ahead and laugh at me if you will. That happens to a lot of people these days. Anyway, after I decided I did not want to be a comic book artist, or rather that I decided that it was not worth the immense effort that was indicated for potentially not even being able to do it in the long run, I switched over to a major that I had actually been considering at the time of enrollment at Hofstra, which is where I went, which was publishing. And I spent a year as a publishing major, and I was all set to get into the publishing industry, which I wanted to be an editor for fiction novels. And I was all set for that. I was stoked for it. I thought I was primed and ready. And in fact, in all of my classes that involved editorial work or really like anything that involved the logistics end of the business, I excelled. But there was one class that I absolutely was not able to pass. I'm cleaning my brush a little bit right now because it was getting a little bit frayed, and I'm just trying to take good care of it. Anyway, the one class I couldn't pass was, just checking the time, was the marketing class. Now, I maintain that the reason I couldn't pass that class wasn't because I wasn't any good at it, but because the professor was very focused on numbers. I'm not much of a math person, but she was very much focused on budget numbers and marketing budgets and putting together a proper budget. But she never really gave us a clear indication, or at least she never gave me a clear indication, I don't know, maybe I missed that class, of what kind of numbers we were working with. Now, I can do numbers. I can do a budget if you give me how much money I've got to work with. I can set up budgeting numbers. It's not hard. It's very simple math, even for a guy like me who hates math. I'm not so good at using that knowledge in my personal life. I need to get better at managing my money, but don't we all? Anyway, because of that, I had a lot of trouble passing the tests. And as a result, got a full-on F in the class, which I believe was my first F in college, because every other class I was going to fail, I instead withdrew from. Excuse me, I'm a little bit gassy this evening, I guess. I have some acid reflux problems, and if I don't eat completely perfectly, and by that I mean eat only water and congealed water, and even if I do only eat water, oh, he's got a little knife there. Cool. I hadn't seen that. I'll have to figure out a paint scheme for that. Anyway, if I don't eat properly, I start to get a little bit refluxy. Bad acid reflux has caused me multiple hospital trips, which is never fun. So yeah, some days, at the end of the day, I'll get a little bit burpy, so I apologize if that comes across on the video and if it's mega gross. If it is mega gross, if it made you want to vomit, go ahead and put that in the comments section, and I will make sure in future recording sessions to avoid recording while feeling the way I do right now. I don't know if that will be an immediate thing to the next episode, because I'm probably going to record 4 or 5 episodes right now before bed, but it is what it is. Oh, he's got a little sidearm too. Well, he's got a lot of little details I wasn't aware of. Can you see him? You can see him, hooray. So yeah, unfortunately, I was not going to be able to pass that class. And I needed to pass that class in order to graduate with a publishing major. So I had to change my major again. A lot of people say, well, I should have taken the class again, but, well, at Hofstra, at least at the time, you were only allowed to reattempt a certain number of classes over the course of your academic career. And I think it was like a total of 3 or something. It was an absurdly small number. And I had already reattempted, I think it was 2 classes. Like I was close to my maximum. So I didn't want to waste it on a class that I really wasn't confident that I could pass a second time around. It was a pragmatic decision in the end. So I went and I changed to a different English major because I knew that I could pass with either a literature major, which would have been just a lot of literary analysis, or a creative writing major, which would have been a lot of, you guessed it, creative writing. I always enjoyed creative writing in school, like high school, middle school, and that kind of stuff. I had never considered it as an option in college until I was desperate to graduate. I wasn't even really fully aware that it was a major until I'd been at Hofstra for 3 or 4 years and found out that one of my friends was a creative writing major. Pretty sure that's what gave me the idea. In retrospect, I wish I'd known sooner, because that's the major I probably would have started with. You know, when I first went to college, and I was a freshman, and I was trying to figure out what do I want to major in, a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, who I haven't seen in probably coming on, let's see, I graduated in '08, he graduated in '07, I think. No, he graduated earlier in '08. It's 2015 now, yeah. I haven't seen him in the better part of a decade. It's been like 7 years now. I haven't seen the guy. Haven't heard from him in like 2. He's busy up in Canada these days doing a lot of, I think he's like teaching at a college up in Canada. I've read a lot of his recent articles. He writes a lot of articles as well online. He's a very prolific kind of guy. I'm very proud of him. In any case, a dear friend of mine asked me, well, what do you like to do when you're bored? You know, what do you do when you're in your room, got nothing else to do, no one's around? And I didn't really give the question a lot of thought, partially because he, at the time, was very pushy with the question. Now, I'm not trying to throw any shade his way. We were both young, he thought he was helping me, so, you know, I felt like I was being put on the spot, and I said, well, I like to doodle a lot. You know, I did a lot of doodling in class. And he said, well, there you go, be an art major. And I took that to heart. I took that recommendation to heart. And I went ahead and I enrolled as a fine arts major. If I had sat down and given that question more thought at the time, I would have realized that in high school especially, I spent so much time writing really crappy fiction when I wasn't at school, and even when I was at school. For a few projects, you know, there was always the occasional creative writing project, and I always jumped all over those projects. I thought they were great. But that's because I thought they were easy. I very much enjoyed doing them, and that made them easy. I always liked an easy task. Okay, I think I've got all the Gnarls green I'm going to need for now, unless... Yeah, let me get that in there. I can always undo it. If I'd really given that question the thought it was due, I probably would have been a creative writing major from the start. Now, that wouldn't have really helped me in the long run, because creative writing has not gotten me any relevant work. I think it helped me get my current job as creative writing major, provided me with a much expanded vocabulary and the tools to use it. I'm a big believer now, at least I don't know if I was at the time. I'm a big believer in the ability to communicate verbally in a graceful and eloquent manner. I try to tone it down so as not to sound like a self-absorbed kind of prick. I can let it get out of hand, rather, very easily. Excuse me, I had a little hiccup. But yeah, I'm a big fan of verbal communication, both in writing and in speaking. And I think that's really part of what got me the current job I have, because the current job I have involves a lot of email and telephone communications. I'm currently a logistics and customer service specialist for a shipping company, but that doesn't matter. One of the things I missed out on as a creative writing major, and one of the things I really would have liked to be involved with, getting into the rule of gold now, sorry, segue, they had, a lot of the creative writing majors, at least the ones that had been in the major for a couple of years, had little events that were readings. You know, they would take some of the stuff they were working on and read it for an audience. And some of the professors would get involved too, because a lot of the professors, in fact, I think all of the creative writing professors were published authors. But essentially it was about the students' work and showcasing the students' work and progress. And unfortunately, I was never invited to involve myself with anything like that, because I was only in the major for about a year before graduating. So it was just something that never became an opportunity. I'm doing the gunning Rulic Gold. Basically all the weapons for this army are going to be gold. Why? I like the idea. I think it's kind of a good silly. So yeah, that's really my main regret for having been a creative writing major so late in my academic career was that I never really got the full community experience for that major. But I really am quite thankful for my time in it. I would very much like to be a novelist one day, and I am working on it. I'm currently working on a novel. But that is a story for another time, because I'm looking at the clock, and it looks like this episode just hit 30 minutes, and I know that we're planning on doing 30-minute episodes for this series. So, I will see you next time, Fearless Gamers, where we will continue to paint our Akalis Sikh troop from Infinity. And until next time, take care.